Hello and welcome to Week in Review with me, Jayne Secker. Kevin Maguire and Andrew Pearce are here to look back at the biggest stories of the last 7 days. What have been your big stories?
It's got to be Europe. The official campaign is finally underway and the gloves are off at last.
Yep, got to be Europe, and Jeremy Corbyn's come out as in.
Well, more on that in a second, but first let's get a taste of what else the week was all about. After weeks of build-up, the official EU referendum campaign began. The vote is on June the 23rd. Questions were asked about press privacy after the Culture Secretary, John Whittingdale, admitted he'd had a relationship with a sex worker, which he'd ended once he discovered her job. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge toured India. Steel, conservation and cricket were on the agenda. Music producer, reality TV star and the former husband of Liza Minnelli, David Guest, passed away in a London hotel. He was 62. Sky News gained access to the Metropolitan Police's Dangerous Dogs team as more illegal animals face being destroyed. England gained a new golfing hero as Danny Willett triumphed at the Masters at Augusta just days after becoming a father for the first time. We were given a look around the disused underground station where Winston Churchill sheltered during the Blitz. Thailand's traditional New Year water festival was hit by drought, although that didn't stop most of the celebrations, as it was claimed the elephants had been trained to spray less water. And how about this for a lucky escape? This snowboarder filmed herself in action on the slopes in Japan without spotting the bear behind. Ooh. Take off the headphones. She was singing along to Rihanna at the time as she was doing it.
So but she couldn't hear the bear growling and roaring.
No, well, you know,
if indeed it was.
Well, there has been some speculation that it might be a hoax, this video, although it hasn't been proved or disproved either way. So we're continuing to run it because it's so great.
Yeah, but you wouldn't hear it if you're not just because of who you're listening to, because of the snow and the sound and the
Kevin Maguire, the great snowboarding expert. How many times have you snowboarded?
I went skiing once.
Once
was
about
enough.
15.
I've been sledging. That's about as far as I've ever got. That was one of the funniest stories of the week. But the big story of the week, of course, has been the EU, and the campaign has now launched officially. Both sides, their campaign groups have been finalised, and after much debate on the Brexit side, Vote Leave was chosen as their official campaign, while Jeremy Corbyn presented his case for backing the Britain Stronger in Europe campaign. Andrew, to you first. The starting gun has been fired, 10 weeks to go.
Yeah.
Are you very excited?
No. You have to think...
the population is.
No, and I don't think really voters have got terribly engaged so far, and I think it won't really kick off, I don't think, until we get the local elections out of the way, the London mayoral elections, Scottish elections. But interesting to finally see Jeremy Corbyn come out of the closet, so to speak, and declare...
So this is the Britain Stronger in Europe campaign.
But it was a really underwhelming speech.
See, and we can't make the case for out there.
And we know... We'll easily make the case for out. We want to get control of our... What are you talking about? We want to get control of our money, our budgets, our borders, and we don't want 27 countries telling us what to do. But Corbyn, when pressed about why he's changed his view, because most of his parliamentary career from 1983, he was been in favour of leaving, which is the position of the hard left, of which he's a leading member, said it's because overwhelmingly that's the position of my party and I'm the leader of the party. Utterly underwhelming, and he's going to have to the Labour are going to have to do a lot better, I think, to motivate their supporters to vote for a very flawed status quo.
What has become clear this week, you know, we knew it already, really, Kevin, is that on both sides that there's real political disparity amongst both camps, isn't there? There is a political divide within both of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, although Labour is far more united than the Conservative Party, which is split down the middle. But there's going to be some very unlikely bedfellows when you get, I suppose, Nigel Farage and George Galloway with Boris Johnson. Then on the other campaign, the Stay In, you will have Jeremy Corbyn and David Cameron, Tim Farron, but you'll also get the Greens and you'll get Plaid Cymru and the SNP. But I went to that Corbyn speech and I listened to him, and he made a very good case for staying in, for leading, not leaving. And it is a patriotic case.
In it?
No,
yes,
it's
yes,
not.
I do. And I'll tell you why.
He's following, not leading.
I'll tell you why. He set out very well what it means in terms of employment rights, tackling crime, solving the refugee crisis, environmental issues by staying in.
Why it's more prosperous to stay in. He didn't talk about the refugee crisis, did he really? And that was one of the complaints of journalists afterwards, that migration is a key thing that a lot of people care about, and he didn't really address it.
No, what he said there is he didn't think it's just the single problem, which some of your lot want to make it out to be. You've got to look at these things in the round. And people have good reason to complain when they're low-paid, poor prospects in bad housing. But don't just blame people who have come, who are migrants. Very few refugees. Migrants have come here to work.
We've got 10 weeks of this, so let's keep it short this week and move on to our gaffe of the week. And we've chosen Bono this week. He's made the cut for his plan for dealing with Islamic State and other extremists.
It's like you speak violence, you speak their language, but you laugh at them when they're goose-stepping down the street, and it takes away their power. So I'm suggesting that the Senate send in Amy Schumer and Chris Rock and Sacha Baron Cohen. Thank you.
Pathetic. That's the word. Pathetic. And did you see behind him Douglas Alexander, who was the former Shadow Foreign Secretary who works for him? His face was a mask of horror because it's not clever, it's stupid.
Right, there is an argument.
It's certainly thinking outside the box, isn't it?
Yeah, a long way out the box. But there is an argument. You can use cartoons and humour, you can use cinema and so on to undermine support for terrorists.
But not cartoons of Mohammed, because that can get into trouble.
If I see somebody in London coming towards me and they're a terrorist with a Kalashnikov and they've got a suicide vest, I don't want to see Mark Steele or Sarah Millican, as funny as I think they are as comedians. I want to see a heavily armed cop or a soldier.
Amy Schumer has given her response on Twitter. It was a two-word response. Sadly, I can't repeat it. She's clearly not keen to go out there either.
Why don't we send him out there? People are laughing at him. He's so ridiculous.
What's the second word off, just to give us a clue?
It was, actually. Right, let's move on to privacy, which also has been in the news this week. It came to a head after weeks of rumours and speculation online. The Culture Secretary, John Whittingdale, admitted that he had had a relationship with a prostitute, one that he ended when he found out about her job. So why hadn't it been in the papers? Sky Senior News correspondent Ian Woods reports.
Morning, Mr. Whittingdale.
Good morning.
Well, he's had better mornings, but then again, it could have been worse.
I've made a statement. I've nothing further to add.
What about
John Whittingdale remains a cabinet minister. There's no suggestion he resign, and he has the Prime Minister's backing. The morning papers didn't seem that interested that he'd confessed to dating a prostitute. The only paper which splashed the news was the Mirror, which can rarely resist conservative red faces. And yet the broadcasters, Sky News included, led on it. Not as a sex scandal, but amid accusations that editors refused to expose the Culture Secretary because of their cosy relationship with him. John Whittingdale was a critic of aspects of the Leveson inquiry into press behaviour and unenthusiastic about some of the report's recommendations.
I don't know why he's made that decision. It may have nothing to do with these revelations, but it's the perception of undue influence that he has to tackle. And he can do that by recusing himself from making decisions about the implementation of Leveson.
So was this story spiked for privacy or political reasons? While newspapers decided not to run it, last Friday the industry's trade paper was going public with a debate into the rights and wrongs of non-publication.
At first glance, MP takes hooker to public event is a story, isn't it? That's quite interesting. But when they looked into it, when they fronted him up, as we say, he said actually he's in a relationship with someone. When he found out what they did for a living, he ended the relationship, and I think people felt that wasn't a story.
John Whittingdale has been an influential figure in media regulation for a decade, first as chairman of the Culture Select Committee and then in the Cabinet. For some media bosses, it may be a case of better the devil you know. A replacement may have been more willing to crack the whip.
Bum, bum. Bum, bum.
Are you surprised that this story didn't make it into the papers all those months ago?
The absurd conspiracy theories from the increasingly preposterous hacked off just make me laugh. And Maguire did the tweet of the week. What did you say? You woke up one day to say that hacked off, who are great privacy campaigners, want cabinet ministers' privacy is now invaded. He wasn't a cabinet minister at the time. He was an MP. He's divorced. He's got a perfectly good relationship with his wife and family. He dumped this woman when he found out she was an escort. What's the story?
At the time, about 2 years ago, the story was being pimped around by another sex worker who wanted £20,000 for it when he was pretty low-key. He was approached and he said, I'm a single man, didn't know, why are you going to write about this? Tom Watson, who exposed a lot of abuse in the press, was approached for a comment and he giggled and he said, "You've got no justification for invading this man's privacy." Then you get, because 3 other papers then look at it, 1 on the left, 2 on the right, and it becomes some incredible blackmail conspiracy holding a sword of Damocles, I think Chris Bright, Labour MP, said over John Whittingdale. The truth about John Whittingdale is a right-wing Thatcherite Tory who doesn't believe in state regulation. You wouldn't have to push him not to regulate the press. He doesn't believe in it. I personally think he's a bit of a lousy culture secretary. I hate his attacks on the BBC, and I detest his threat to sell off privatised Channel 4. But hacked off all those other lovies, they've created an environment where you can't just trample on people's privacy now and go into their private lives. Now, some people will think it's wrong, some will think it's right, but they've created an environment where you can't do it. And just because you don't like John Whittingdale doesn't mean you can write about who he's going out with.
That hacked off went to the BBC with it. The BBC have an agenda against John Whittingdale. They've briefed against him systematically because John Whittingdale is the first culture secretary to say it's too big, they need to pull in their horns, and the BBC feel threatened by him, so they wanted to undermine him and damage him, and it failed.
It's a story, you know, we all covered it. It's not just the BBC that covered it.
I think the BBC is an equally ludicrous conspiracy theory, but there's lots of silly conspiracy theories around this. Once it was out and politicians were shouting about it, you could write about it. You could write about it then. And I do think there's a legitimate question now about the cost of the trip, and he didn't register it. He'll have to face questions on that, although he insists he did nothing wrong and it was under. But it's very different now. It used to be publish and be damned. Now it is don't publish and be damned. Well, people do have a problem.
And that's because of the Leveson inquiry, who defined a public interest, and that is not in the public interest. The public might be interested, but there was no public interest in publishing.
Very, very different.
No, if I'd have known, I'd have loved to have published it. but I can hear lawyers saying you can't.
Right, quick quiz for you now. It was revealed this week that the spies at GCHQ were asked to use all their tricks, there's a clue there, to protect something unusual. Any idea what it might have been?
We haven't got this quiz right for a few weeks, you know. I don't know what
Well, I know the answers, I just don't want to share them.
Need to read the papers more in the week. Don't know. We'll find out in the break. Welcome back to Week in Review with me, Jayne Secker. I'm joined by Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and Andrew Pearce, Consultant Editor of the Daily Mail. Now, before the break, we asked who were spies at GCHQ booked for an unusual mission to protect. Neither of you knew it. Neither of you got it. It was a matter of intense national security. The contents of one of the Harry Potter books. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. There was a thought that it had been leaked and that it was going to be leaked out to the public before it was actually released, and apparently GCHQ were asked to intervene.
Well, I hope she paid for it.
I hope they didn't do anything.
Well, they said we don't comment on our defence against the dark arts.
They do. Oh, very good.
And the manuscript was actually found to be a fake at the end of the day, so it didn't require much work.
It's a bit of GCHQ PR than while they listen to all our calls.
She's got a new book coming out quite soon. I think you find she has.
She's very good.
The cynics.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
Now, this week, scientists set out to find the truth behind one of Scotland's biggest mysteries. Is there, or has there ever been, or well, there ever will be, a Loch Ness monster? Sky's Adele Robinson joined the hunt.
8 decades of searching for Nessie, and finally, here she is. Instantly recognisable, 30 feet long, and caught on sonar imaging of the loch bed. But she's not quite what she seems. The remains are, in fact, a long-lost prop from this film involving a submarine disguised as the Loch Ness Monster.
The monster is getting closer and closer.
The survey has been described as the most in-depth of Loch Ness ever, mapping out the rocky and murky depths of up to 230 metres. But the team have already claimed to have made other significant discoveries. Disproving the so-called Nessie Trench, a crevice believed to be big enough to fit a monster. And a few days ago, the wreck of an unidentified sunken boat. With this equipment, can you categorically disprove that Nessie exists?
Sadly not. The vehicle's going very low. So there's all this water above us. It's quite possible that Nessie's hiding in there. In fact, I dare say she knows we're here and she's hiding from us.
I'm quite surprised there's any more mileage in this story.
The capacity for the great British eccentrics, and we can't get enough of them. I mean, do they really believe this stuff? I loved it as a child, but come on, it's crazy. But it's a fantastic story. Do we really ever want to puncture the myth?
No,
I'm not sure we do.
No, I'd love there to be a monster.
Yeah.
Pixies, fairies, the lot, but I don't believe it. And I've got to admire the tourist board for keeping this going.
It is a pretty good going.
But it's like Weeping Madonnas or the Turin Shroud. It's a load of, you know.
Right. What's your choice of top paper stories of the week? Andrew, we're starting with you. And this is all about Britain's handling of the situation in Libya, which has caused a bit of an argument this week between Crispin Blunt and
Crispin Blunt, a former government, he's the Tory MP, he's a former military man, chairs the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, went to Libya. He says he was given information by a diplomat which revealed that we want to send quite a lot of troops out there, maybe 1,000. It's a basket case, Libya, which we created, I'm afraid, because of the Cameron and Sarkozy's joint venture. But his response from the Foreign Secretary, remarkably for a Tory MP, he called it less than candid. In parliamentary speak, he is saying that Philip Hammond, in his response to his questions, lied. That's what he means by less than candid.
It is astonishing. Crispin Blunt's a former army officer, and he appreciates the risk you would take sending soldiers into what is now an Islamist basket case, and they would become targets immediately. But that clash is quite serious. But I mean, the government's not been open.
The government has responded and said, you know, they've been very clear and that there will be a discussion if troops are going to go in. But Crispin Blunt seems to say it depends on the definition of whether it's combat or whether it's...
Yes, exactly. What are they going to do? Are they peacekeeping? Are they training the Libyan people? In which case, which Libyans would they train? Because, of course, there are so many tribes and insurgents.
And then are they in Libya, or do you put them over the border in Tunisia?
Kevin, Prince William, him and Kate are out and about. They're in India and Bhutan this week.
You must be proud of them.
Workshire William on his latest holiday, but
he raised the issue of British steel.
He did, to his credit. I'll give him credit for this, with Narendra Modi, the Premier of India, in a meeting, because, of course, Tata, the owner of Port Talbot and other plants, is an Indian company. It's got a very good reputation as an employer, particularly a Jaguar Land Rover too, which is driving ahead. But by him raising it, he will keep it in the forefront of minds there, that you don't want Tata just pulling the plug from Port Talbot. But, of course, the real problem isn't in India. The real problem is in China and the cheap steel that's being dumped. And David Cameron and George Osborne don't want to see boo to the Chinese president because they want him to build nuclear power stations in Britain.
OK. Tesco. Andrew, better news this week. It's better results.
Well, a year ago they lost
anyway.
billions of pounds. Is it 5 or 6 billion? And they're now back in the black to the tune of about 125 million. But even I can see it's creative accounting. They've moved figures around. They're not really back in profit, and that's why the share price of Tesco fell again. And it just shows the conventional, traditional retailers have got their work cut out, because the insurgents, Aldi and Lidl, are breathing down their necks and doing very, very well.
And it seems that none of us are being as loyal as we perhaps once were in the past to any brand.
It's broken down, a bit like with political parties. You know, I mean, my mother always shopped at Sainsbury's. I just go wherever the supermarket is. I haven't been to Aldi's yet.
What's closest to your
home,
don't you?
Exactly that.
I'll take you one day.
He took a picture of me outside one of these.
Aside. He wouldn't go in, though.
And he tweeted it.
Yeah.
Which one was it?
It was an Aldi one,
We don't have any where I live, Aldi or
Well, no, it's Fortnum & Mason, isn't it? Kevin, Led Zeppelin, they've hit a bit of a bum note this week.
That's right. It's incredible. Stairway to Heaven. They're being challenged by a psychedelic group called Spirit, who had a very similar track called Taurus.
Let's listen to how similar they are.
Well, they're uncannily alike, aren't they? And it's going to be difficult. I don't know if a judge or jury decides, but a judge has already said...
Well, a jury is going to decide.
Yeah,
the judges
I mean, they are very close.
Enough similarities for it to go to a jury.
Why has it taken so
45 years on. There's a statute of limitations, so they've got to do it now. But you do wonder if it really was a rip-off, wouldn't you have gone a lot earlier to get your cash?
They want to line their pockets for their pensions, the guys from Taurus.
It's not the first time.
They used to play with.
Well, Led Zeppelin aligned theirs.
And, of course, they used to play, I think, as backing group
to Led
Zeppelin.
With them for a few
So the
years
suggestion is Led Zeppelin heard that and pinched it.
Yeah.
Right, thanks for the papers. Let's take you through your ups and downs. Kevin, we're starting with you this week, and it's Dennis Skinner. You are sending the Beast of Bolsover up.
Hurrah! I love Dennis Skinner. Kicked out of the House of Commons for calling Cameron Dodgy Dave. Of course, he was controversial about that. I bumped into him when he was being escorted out, and he thought he'd be picked up on calling him a scrounger, not Dodgy Dave.
We've got the clip, actually. Let's have a listen.
Maybe Dodgy Dave will answer it now.
I invite the honourable gentleman to withdraw that adjective that he used a moment ago. He's perfectly capable of asking his question without using that word.
This man has done more to divide this nation than anybody else. He's looked after his own pocket. I still refer to him as Dodgy Dave.
I order the honourable member to withdraw immediately from the House for the remainder of this day's sitting.
In the real world, calling somebody dodgy, it isn't sort of such a big thing, but in Parliament, it's unparliamentary language.
Yeah, but he called him Dodgy Dave before, and he'd not been kicked out.
I suspect the Speaker didn't hear it.
Yeah, Cameron wasn't kicked out when he called him a dinosaur, which is very offensive and gratuitous too. But this
was about, just putting it in context, this was about the tax row about Cameron.
And it was the fact, and Dennis Skinner was making a legitimate point, that Cameron's got two homes. He charged the taxpayer a fortune for one to get rid of the mortgage. He paid off the mortgage on the other one himself, now rents it out for a fortune. But he wasn't paying off with his own money the mortgage on the one he could get on us.
He didn't break a single rule.
It's not about breaking a rule.
He didn't break a rule.
It's about how you behave.
And anyway, they're all at it.
OK. We're sending Dennis Skinner up.
Yeah.
You are anyway. But you're sending down Stoke Gifford Parish Council near Bristol because of their banning the park run. Well, not banning them, but asking the organisers of park run to contribute to the upkeep of the park.
I know. Park runs are a fantastic organisation around Britain. 9 o'clock in 850 places. Something like 100,000 people go running for 5 kilometres. It's about 3.2 miles. Do it myself sometime. It's all about voluntary contributions. People can be running who are kids, some have dogs, pushing kids in pushchairs. You get people over in their 80s, you get people who are huge and can't run very fast, you get people who are terrific athletes.
Are you in that category, Kevin?
Well, I am in the slower category, isn't it? And everybody works together. It's all
walk round.
And then you get these killjoys on this local council, instead of encouraging it, now wanting to get them to pay.
But you can see the point that one or two runners in a park on a path is one thing, but if there's a few hundred people churning up the grass in a big group, it does damage the fabric of the park, and it does then spoil it for other park users.
The park are fantastic about making sure there's no litter, there's no damage. After they've left, you wouldn't know they've been. If there was a problem with churning up the grass, they would change the route. Stoke Gifford are just idiots. Utter idiots.
We do have an obesity problem. This might even help get rid of it.
Well, indeed. So we're sending park run down. Now, you, though, Andrew, are sending up this week the golfer Danny Willett. What a week he's had.
Fantastic week. He's just become a dad, and then he wins against all odds the US Masters, one of the biggest tournaments in the world. And he won it on the last 9 holes when the guy who was up against, a champion called
Jordan Spieth,
had a complete meltdown. 6 shots. He had a 6-shot lead with 9 holes to go. And this guy kept his cool, and then the first thing he had to do when he'd put on the green jacket was go and feed the baby.
Oh,
lovely story.
Baby was back at home, but baby Zachariah came a few days early, which is really, really lovely.
And it's a great story.
So sending up Danny Willett, but you're sending down, Andrew, this week, finally, the laundrette.
They are disappearing from our high street, and I'd like to say I'm sad, but as one who used to use laundrettes when I first started work, God, it was boring.
It was boring, but there was something quite good about being stuck in one place for an hour. You could sit and read a book.
That's true.
You often
could get into conversation with other people.
What, in the warmth, you mean?
It was good in the
you
warmth.
must have had a horrible
flat.
Actually, the laundrette
was
warmer and cleaner than my bedsit, which I first lived in Cheltenham, I can tell you. But it is sad because,
Nick Cayman did a great deal for the laundrette, didn't he?
He did, in those jeans.
And Doc Cotton.
Utterly miserable when I used to have to take my washing.
British life.
Can you imagine being stuck in a laundrette with Maguire? Oh, my God.
OK, so we're sending down the laundrettes because apparently they're disappearing from our high streets, and they've been much missed by many.
Yes.
Thank you both very much. Thank you for joining us for our review of the week. We'll be back with much more next week, but for now, it's goodbye from them.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.